The smell of engine oil and burnt circuits filled the small repair shop on Frontier Station Orion 7. Park Ho wiped his hands on a dirty cloth and looked at the mining drone on his workbench. The old machine had seen better days, but now it hummed quietly, ready to work again. Another one saved, he said to himself with a small smile. His assistant, Hana, looked up from the corner where she was sorting through boxes of spare parts. That drone is older than me. I still do not understand how you fixed it. Ho shrugged. Every machine wants to work. You just have to find what is broken and give it what it needs. Hana shook her head but smiled. She was 23 years old and had been learning from Ho for 2 years now. He was not the richest mechanic on the station, and he was certainly not the most famous, but he was the most stubborn. When other repair shops turned customers away, Ho would say yes. When other mechanics said something was impossible to fix, Ho would try anyway. The shop was small and cluttered. Shelves lined the walls, filled with parts from 100 different machines. Some were human technology. Others came from alien worlds far across the galaxy. Ho never threw anything away. He believed that every piece had a purpose, even if that purpose had not revealed itself yet. Business had been slow lately. The frontier stations were quiet places, far from the busy center of human space. Most ships that stopped here were traders or miners, and their machines were old and tired. Ho did not mind. He liked the quiet life. He liked helping people who did not have much money. The door to the shop slid open with a soft hiss. Ho looked up, expecting to see a miner or a trader. Instead, he saw a child. She was not human. That much was clear right away. Her skin was pale blue, almost like the color of a winter sky. Her eyes were large and golden, and they looked around the shop with a mixture of fear and hope. She wore simple clothes, a gray dress that seemed too plain for someone of her kind. In her arms, she held something small and still. Ho put down his cloth and walked toward her slowly. He did not want to scare her. Alien children were rare on frontier stations. Most alien species kept their young ones safe in the center of their territories, far from places like this. "Hello there," he said gently. "Are you lost?" The girl shook her head. Her golden eyes looked up at him, and he could see tears forming in them. "Please," she said in broken galactic common, "can you fix?" She held out the thing in her arms. It was an android no bigger than a cat. Its body was made of smooth silver metal, and its face had delicate features that looked almost alive. But the android was not moving. Its eyes were dark, and a large crack ran across its chest. Ho took the android carefully and examined it. His eyes went wide when he recognized the design. This was technology. The Dominion was one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy. Their technology was centuries ahead of anything humans could make. And this android was not just any machine. It was a companion model, the kind that bonded with a single owner and stayed with them for life. "Where did you get this?" he asked softly. "Is my friend," the girl said. Her voice was shaking. "She was gift from my grandmother, but she fell, she broke. The doctors said she cannot be fixed." Ho looked at the crack on the android's chest. Through the opening, he could see a small crystal glowing faintly inside. The crystal core processor. It was the heart of the android, the thing that gave it life and memory and personality. And the crystal was fractured. He knew what that meant. In technology, a fractured crystal core was a death sentence. The crystals were grown in special laboratories over many years. Each one was unique. When they broke, they could not be replaced or repaired. Every engineer knew this. It was basic knowledge. Hana came to stand beside him. She looked at the android and then at the little girl. "Ho," she whispered, "that is tech. We cannot work on that." But Ho was not listening. He was looking at the little girl's face. Tears were running down her blue cheeks now. Her small hands were shaking. She had probably traveled a long way to find someone who would help her, and everyone had told her no. "What is your name?" he asked her. "Vila," she said quietly. "Vila, that is a pretty name. Ho knelt down so he could look into her eyes. I am going to be honest with you. This is very bad damage. I do not know if I can fix, but I promise you that I will try my best. Vila's eyes went wide. You will try. Yes, but it might take some time. Can you wait here? The little girl nodded quickly. More tears fell from her eyes, but now they seemed like tears of hope instead of sadness. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you so much. Ho smiled and stood up. He carried the android to his workbench and turned on his light. Behind him, Hana was staring at him like he had lost his mind. You know this is impossible, right? She said. Crystal cores cannot be repaired. Every engineer in the galaxy knows that. Maybe they just have not tried hard enough, Ho replied. Hana opened her mouth to argue, but she stopped. She had seen that look in his eyes before. It was the look he got when he was about to do something stubborn and probably stupid. But it was also the look he got when he was about to do something amazing. Far away, in a different part of the station, a tall woman stood in a small room filled with screens. Her skin was the same pale blue as Vila's, but her eyes were sharper and colder. She wore a dark cloak that hid her true appearance, but underneath, she carried herself like someone who was used to giving orders. Her name was, and she was the Empress of the Dominion. She ruled over 1,000 worlds. Billions of lives depended on her decisions. And right now, she was watching a human mechanic through a hidden camera. Commander stood beside her. He was her head of security, a tall and serious man with scars on his face from many battles. He looked at the screen with disgust. Your Majesty, we should retrieve the princess now. This human is wasting her time. He cannot fix the android. Our own technicians already tried. The Empress said nothing. She watched as the human carefully examined the broken android. She watched as he spoke gently to her daughter. She watched as he made a promise that he probably could not keep. He did not ask for payment, she said finally. Frowned what? The human. He did not ask for payment before agreeing to help. He did not even ask who she was or where she came from. The Empress tilted her head slightly. Interesting. He is a fool, said. Humans are primitive. They play with machines they do not understand. He will fail and the princess will be disappointed again. The Empress turned away from the screen. Perhaps, but I want to see what happens. Let him try. Looked unhappy, but he bowed his head. As you wish, Your Majesty. Back in the repair shop, Ho was already deep in his work. He had connected the android to his computer and was studying its systems. The damage was worse than he had thought. The crystal core had 3 major fractures and dozens of smaller cracks. Energy was leaking from it like water from a broken cup. Vila sat on a bench near the wall. Hana had given her a blanket and a cup of warm tea. The little girl watched Ho work with wide eyes. She did not understand what he was doing, but she could see that he was trying very hard. Your friend, Hana said to her gently, how long have you had her? Since I was very small, Vila replied. Grandmother gave her to me before she went to the stars. Hana understood. In many alien cultures, going to the stars meant dying. The grandmother had given Vila a companion to watch over her, and now that companion was broken. She looked at Ho, bent over his workbench with tools in his hands and determination in his eyes. She did not know if he could do the impossible, but she knew that he would not stop trying until he had given everything he had. That was the kind of man he was, and maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. The station's lights dimmed as the night cycle began. Most shops closed their doors. The corridors grew quiet, but in Ho's repair shop the lights stayed on. Ho had been working for 6 hours now. His eyes were tired and his back hurt from bending over the workbench. But he did not stop. He could not stop. Every time he thought about giving up, he remembered the tears in Vila's eyes. The little alien girl had fallen asleep on the bench. Hana had covered her with a thicker blanket and put a small pillow under her head. Now Hana sat nearby, watching Ho work and handing him tools when he needed them. "You should rest," she said quietly. "You have been at this for hours." "I am close to something," Ho replied. He did not look up from his work. "I can feel it." Hana sighed. She had heard him say that many times before. Sometimes he was right, sometimes he was wrong, but she knew better than to argue with him when he was in this state. Ho stared at the fractured crystal core through a magnifying lens. The cracks spread across its surface like tiny rivers. Each crack was leaking energy and the crystal was slowly dying. According to every manual he had found, there was nothing that could be done. Engineers had spent centuries studying these crystals. They had tried everything. Nothing worked. But Ho was not an engineer. He was a human mechanic from a small frontier station. He did not know what was supposed to be impossible. He only knew what he could try. He pulled up files on his computer. Most of them were from market databases, the kind of information that was not supposed to leave space. He had paid good money for these files over the years, never knowing if they would be useful. Now he was glad he had them. The files told him everything about crystal cores, how they were grown, how they stored information, how they powered android bodies, and most importantly, how they failed. The crystals were made of a special material that conducted both energy and data. When they cracked, the connections broke, energy scattered, memories fragmented. The android's personality fell apart like a puzzle losing its pieces. Engineers always tried to fix the crystal directly. They used lasers and special chemicals and complicated machines, but the crystals were too delicate. Every attempt to repair them only made the damage worse. Ho leaned back in his chair and thought. He was not smart enough to fix the crystal the way. He did not have their tools or their knowledge, but maybe that was not a bad thing. Maybe thinking like it was the problem. He remembered something his father had taught him long ago. His father had been a mechanic too, working on old cars back on Earth before the family moved to space. Once, they had found an antique car with a cracked engine block. Everyone said it was ruined, but his father had an idea. "You cannot something," his father had said, "but you can make the break into something new." His father had filled the cracks with a special metal compound. The compound bonded with the broken edges and made them stronger than before. The crack was still there, but it was no longer a weakness. It had become part of the engine. Ho looked at the crystal core again. What if he did not try to heal the cracks? What if he filled them instead? He jumped up from his chair and started searching through his shelves. Hana watched him with confusion as he pulled out boxes and containers, looking for something specific. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Looking for gold," he replied. "Gold? Why gold?" Ho found what he was looking for. It was a small container of gold alloy compound. He had used it before for repairing delicate circuits. Gold was an excellent conductor of electricity. It did not rust or break down over time, and it was soft enough to fill tiny spaces without forcing them apart. "In old Korea," he explained as he worked, "there was an art called, when a pot or bowl broke, people did not throw it away. They filled the cracks with gold. The broken thing became more beautiful and more valuable than before." Hana's eyes went wide. "You want to use that on technology?" "Why not? The principle is the same. The crystal is broken, but the pieces are still there. If I can fill the cracks with something that conducts energy, maybe the connections will work again." "That is crazy," Hana said, but she was smiling now. "That is completely crazy." Ho smiled back. "I know." He worked through the rest of the night. The process was slow and careful. He heated the gold alloy compound until it became liquid, then used a tiny needle to guide it into each crack. The gold flowed like water, filling every gap and connecting every broken edge. It was delicate work. One mistake could destroy the crystal forever. Ho held his breath many times. His hands were steady, but his heart was racing. He had never done anything like this before. He was not even sure it would work. But he kept going. Hour after hour, crack after crack, until the gold filled every fracture in the crystal. When he finally finished, the crystal looked different. Golden lines ran across its surface like veins of light. It was strange and beautiful. Far away in her hidden room, Empress was still watching. She had not slept either. Something about this human fascinated her. He was doing something that her own scientists had never thought to try. Commander had returned to give his report. Your Majesty, I have gathered information about the human. His name is Park Ho. He is a simple mechanic with no formal training in advanced technology. He has lived on this station for 12 years. He is known for being honest and for charging low prices. The Empress nodded slowly. What else? The locals say he never turns away a customer. He has fixed machines that other mechanics refuse to touch, but he has never worked on anything as advanced as an android before. And yet he is still trying, the Empress said thoughtfully, even though he knows he might fail, even though he will not be paid if he fails. Shook his head. I do not understand these humans. They waste their time on hopeless tasks. They fight battles they cannot win. It is foolish. Or perhaps it is something else, the Empress replied. Perhaps it is something we have forgotten. She watched the screen as Ho carefully examined his work. The human looked exhausted. His eyes were red and his hands were shaking slightly. But there was a light in his face that had not been there before. It was hope. Back in the shop, Ho connected the crystal core to his testing equipment. This was the moment of truth. If his idea had worked, the crystal would show signs of activity. If it had failed, the crystal would be dead. He pressed the button to start the test. For a long moment, nothing happened. The screen stayed dark. Ho felt his heart sink. Maybe it had not worked. Maybe he had just wasted a whole night on a foolish dream. Then slowly, a small light appeared on the screen. It flickered at first, weak and unsteady. But then it grew stronger. The crystal was conducting energy again. The golden lines were carrying power across the fractures, connecting the broken pieces like bridges across rivers. Hana gasped, "It is working, Ho, it is working." Ho let out a breath he did not know he had been holding. It is not finished yet. The crystal is stable, but the android still needs a lot of repair. The body systems are damaged too. But he was smiling now. The hardest part was done. The crystal core was alive. Everything else was just normal repair work. He looked over at Vila, still sleeping peacefully on the bench. She did not know what had just happened. She did not know that her friend had just taken the first step back to life. Ho turned back to his workbench. There was still much work to do and he was very tired, but he did not care. For the first time since Vila had walked into his shop, he truly believed that he could save. And he was not going to stop until he did. Morning came to the station, and Vila woke to the sound of quiet voices. She blinked her golden eyes and looked around. For a moment, she did not remember where she was. Then she saw the cluttered shelves and the bright lights and the human mechanic at his workbench, and everything came back to her. She sat up quickly. Ho turned around. His face was tired with dark circles under his eyes, but he was smiling. "Good morning, little one. Your friend is doing better. I fixed the biggest problem last night. Now I just need to repair the rest of her body." Vila's eyes filled with tears again, but this time they were happy tears. "Really? You fixed her?" "Not completely. Not yet, but she will be okay, I promise." Hana came through the door carrying a tray of food. She had gone to the market early to buy breakfast for everyone. There was bread and fruit and hot soup, simple food but warm and filling. "You need to eat," she said to Ho firmly. "You have been working all night. If you fall down, who will finish the repairs?" Ho laughed and took some bread. "Yes, you are right, thank you, Hana." Vila ate hungrily. She had not realized how hungry she was. The soup was different from what she was used to, but it was good. The human food was simple but made with care. "This is nice," she said quietly. "Thank you." Hana smiled at her. You are welcome. So Vila, where is your family? Are they on the station? Vila hesitated. She had been told not to reveal who she was. Her mother had said it was important to travel quietly, to see how people acted when they did not know they were being watched. But these humans had been so kind to her. It felt wrong to lie to them. My mother is here, she said carefully. She is very busy with her work. She has many responsibilities. What does she do? Hannah asked. She makes decisions, important decisions about many people. Hannah nodded, thinking that Vila's mother was probably a merchant or a station administrator. She did not guess the truth. How could she? The idea that a princess would come to a tiny frontier station was too strange to imagine. Ho finished his bread and went back to work. He was reconnecting the android's body systems now, carefully linking each wire and circuit to the repaired crystal core. It was slower work than the night before, but it was also safer. The hardest part was done. Vila came to stand beside him, watching with curious eyes. Can you tell me what you are doing? Ho smiled. Most people did not want to hear about technical details, but this little girl seemed genuinely interested. Of course. Do you see these wires? They carry energy from the crystal to the rest of his body. Some of them were broken when she fell. I am replacing them with new ones. Where do the new wires come from? From other machines. I save parts from everything I repair. You never know when you will need something. Vila looked at the shelves filled with boxes and containers. You keep everything. Everything? My father taught me that. He said every piece has a purpose, even if you do not know it yet. Ho pointed to a worn metal toolbox near his workbench. That was his. He gave it to me before he died. Vila looked at the toolbox. It was old and scratched, with strange symbols carved into the handle. What do those marks mean? They are Korean letters. They spell my family name, Park. Ho touched the toolbox gently. My father carried this for 40 years. Now I carry it. Vila was quiet for a moment. Then she said, my grandmother gave me, she said would always be my friend even when she was gone. Her voice became small. I miss her. Ho stopped working and looked at the little girl. He understood now why it was so important to her. The android was not just a companion. It was a connection to someone she had lost. I understand, he said softly. When we lose people we love, we hold on to the things they gave us. Those things become more than just objects. They carry memories. They carry love. Vila nodded, her golden eyes bright with unshed tears. At that moment, the shop door opened. A tall woman walked in, wearing the plain clothes of a traveling merchant. Her face was calm and her movements were graceful. She looked around the shop with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Ho straightened up. Welcome, can I help you? The woman smiled politely. I am looking for repair services. Someone told me this was a good shop. I do my best, Ho replied. What needs to be fixed? Nothing right now, I am just looking. The woman walked slowly around the shop, examining the shelves and the workbench. Her eyes paused on Spotty, then moved to Vila, then to Ho. Vila recognized her mother immediately, even in disguise, but she knew better than to say anything. Her mother wanted to watch. Vila understood, so she stayed quiet and pretended to be interested in a small drone on a nearby shelf. The Empress stopped beside Ho's workbench and looked at the android. That is beautiful work, she said. Technology, is it not? Most humans cannot repair such things. It was a challenge, Ho admitted, but the owner needed help. I could not say no. Even though the repair might fail, even though you might not be paid. Ho shrugged. If I only helped people when I was sure of success, I would not help many people. And payment is not everything. Some things are more important than money. The Empress raised one eyebrow. What things? Kindness, keeping promises, making a sad child smile again. Ho glanced at Vila, who was still pretending to look at the drone. She came to me crying. Her friend was broken. What kind of person would I be if I turned her away? The Empress said nothing. She watched as Ho went back to his work, his hands moving carefully and precisely. There was no pride in his manner, no boasting. He was simply doing what he believed was right. Behind her, the shop door opened again. Commander walked in, dressed as a bodyguard for hire. His face was hard and unfriendly. He looked around the shop with obvious disapproval. "Are you almost done?" he asked the Empress impatiently. "We have other places to be." "In a moment," she replied calmly. Walked further into the shop, looking at the shelves. He deliberately knocked his elbow against a container of small parts. The container fell to the floor with a crash, scattering pieces everywhere. Hana gasped, Vila flinched, but Ho simply stood up and walked over to the mess. "I apologize," said, though his voice did not sound sorry at all. "How clumsy of me." Ho knelt down and began picking up the pieces. "It is no problem, the shop is crowded, these things happen." He smiled up without any anger in his eyes. "I should keep things more organized. That is my fault." Stared at him. He had expected the human to get angry, to shout or complain. That was what most people did when he tested them. But this human just apologized and cleaned up the mess, as if it truly did not matter. The Empress watched this exchange with great interest. Here was a man who had been wronged but chose not to fight, who took blame that was not his, who showed respect even to someone who showed none to him. "What do you charge for your repairs?" she asked. Ho stood up, his hands full of small parts. "It depends on the work. For the android, I will charge only for the materials I use. The labor is free." "Why, that seems like bad business." Ho looked at Vila again. The little girl was watching him now, her golden eyes full of gratitude and hope. "Because she needs her friend back. That matters more than credits. I can always earn more money, but I cannot put a price on helping someone who is hurting." The Empress nodded slowly. Then she turned and walked toward the door. "Thank you for your time. I will remember this shop." Followed her, though he looked back at Ho with a confused expression. He did not understand what had just happened. Outside the shop, the Empress walked in silence for a moment. Then she spoke quietly too. "That man showed more honor in 10 minutes than most nobles show in their entire lives." Frowned. "He is just a simple mechanic. He probably acts kind because he wants something." "No," the Empress shook her head. "He acts kind because that is who he is. I have met thousands of leaders, commanders, and politicians. They all wear masks. They all want power or wealth or fame. But that man wants nothing except to help a crying child." She looked back at the shop, thinking about everything she had seen. The human worked with broken machines the way a healer worked with sick patients, with care, with love. "The Dominion has many servants," she said softly, "but very few true friends. I wonder if we have been looking in the wrong places." Did not reply. He did not understand his Empress's words, but he had served her for 30 years, and he knew when she had made up her mind about something. Something was about to change, and it had all started with a simple human mechanic and a broken android. The afternoon sun filtered through the small windows of the repair shop, casting long shadows across the cluttered floor. Ho sat at his workbench, making the final adjustments to his body. His hands were steady, but his heart was beating fast. After all this work, after all these hours, the moment of truth was coming. Vila sat on the bench nearby, her legs swinging nervously. She had not left the shop all day. She had watched Ho work, asked him questions, and helped him when she could. Now she was quiet, her golden eyes fixed on the android's still form. Hana stood beside the workbench, ready to assist if needed. She had stayed awake almost as long as Ho, caught up in the excitement of what they were trying to do. Even she, who had doubted the repair was possible, now felt hope rising in her chest. "I think she is ready," Ho said finally. He stepped back from the workbench and looked at. The android's body was whole again. The crack in her chest had been sealed. The golden lines of the repaired crystal core glowed faintly through her silver skin, like veins of light. Vila jumped up from the bench. Really? Can we wake her up? We can try. Ho wiped his hands on his cloth and took a deep breath. But I must be honest with you, Vila. The body is repaired and the crystal core is stable, but I do not know if her memories survived. She might wake up and not remember anything. She might wake up as a different person. Vila's face became serious. She nodded slowly. I understand. But even if she does not remember me, at least she will be alive. That is better than nothing. Ho felt a wave of respect for this little girl. She was so young, but she understood something that many adults never learned. Love was not about holding onto things exactly as they were. It was about accepting change and being grateful for what remained. All right, he said, let us see what happens. He pressed a small button on the back of his head. This was the activation switch, the command that would tell the crystal core to wake up and connect with the body. For a moment, nothing happened. The android lay still and silent on the workbench. Vila reached out and took Ho's hand. Her small fingers squeezed his tightly. He squeezed back, sharing her fear and her hope. Then slowly something changed. The golden lines in his chest began to glow brighter. A soft humming sound came from inside her body, like a heart starting to beat. Her silver fingers twitched. Her head turned slightly to one side. And then her eyes opened. They were beautiful eyes, deep purple with flecks of gold. They looked around the room with confusion at first, taking in the unfamiliar surroundings. Then they focused on Vila and something changed in their depths. Recognition, memory, love. Vila's voice was soft and musical, like bells ringing in the wind. Vila burst into tears. You remember me. She threw herself at the android, wrapping her small arms around its neck, sat up slowly and hugged her back. Her movements were gentle and careful, like a mother holding a precious child. I remember everything, said. I remember your grandmother giving me to you. I remember all our travels together. I remember falling and feeling myself break apart. Her voice became quieter. I thought I was gone forever, but then there was light and warmth and I found my way back. Hana had tears in her eyes. Even Ho, who had seen many happy moments in his shop, felt his throat tighten with emotion. This was why he did what he did. This was why he never gave up on broken machines. Because behind every machine was a story, and behind every story were people who loved and hoped and dreamed. Turned her purple eyes to Ho. You are the one who repaired me. I am, he said simply. I felt your work through my dreams. I felt you rebuilding me piece by piece, never giving up even when the damage seemed too great. Bowed her head in the fashion, a deep gesture of respect. Thank you. You gave me back my life. Ho bowed back a little awkwardly. I am just glad it worked. To be honest, I was not sure it would. But you tried anyway, said. That is what matters. Vila finally let go of and turned to Ho with shining eyes. How much do I owe you? I do not have much money, but I can try to get more. Ho knelt down so he could look into her eyes. You do not owe me anything. The smile on your face is payment enough. He gently touched her shoulder. Just promise me that you will take good care of, and maybe visit me again someday so I can see how you both are doing. Vila nodded eagerly. I promise. I will visit you every time I come to this station. At that moment, the shop door opened. Everyone turned to look, expecting another customer. But the woman who walked in was not dressed like a customer. She was not dressed like a merchant either. She wore robes of deep purple and silver, with patterns that seemed to shift and flow like water. A thin crown sat on her head, made of the same glowing crystal as core. Her presence filled the room, powerful and commanding. Behind her came Commander and 6 guards in shining armor. Hana dropped the wrench she was holding. It clattered to the floor loudly in the sudden silence. Ho stared at the woman, his mind trying to understand what he was seeing. He had never met a noble before, but he knew the symbols of power when he saw them. This was not just a noble. This was royalty. This was someone who ruled over worlds. Vila ran to the woman and took her hand. "Mother, look is fixed. The human mechanic fixed her." Mother, the word hit Ho like a physical blow. This little girl who had come to his shop crying, who had sat on his bench and eaten his food and asked him questions about his work, was a princess. And her mother was. "Your Majesty," Commander said, his voice formal and cold. "May I present Empress of the Dominion?" Ho felt his legs go weak. He quickly dropped to his knees, bowing his head low. Hana did the same, nearly falling over in her hurry. "Please forgive me," Ho said, his voice shaking. "I did not know. I did not mean any disrespect. I treated the princess like an ordinary customer. I made her sit on a dirty bench and eat common food and—" "Stand up," the Empress said. Her voice was calm but firm. Ho slowly rose to his feet, though he kept his eyes down. His heart was pounding. He had heard stories about alien rulers and their tempers. One wrong word could mean death. One small mistake could destroy everything. The Empress walked toward him. Her footsteps were silent on the cluttered floor. She stopped in front of him and looked at his face with those sharp, cold eyes. "Look at me," she commanded. Ho raised his eyes. Up close, the Empress was even more impressive. She radiated power like a star radiating light. Everything about her spoke of authority and control. But when she looked at him, her expression was not angry. It was curious, almost respectful. "You treated my daughter like an ordinary customer," she said slowly. "You gave her a blanket when she was tired and food when she was hungry. You made her a promise you had no reason to believe you could keep. And then you worked through the night to keep that promise anyway." She paused. "Why?" Ho swallowed hard. His mouth was dry, but he knew he could not lie to this woman. She would see through any deception. "Because she was crying," he said simply. "Her friend was broken. She needed help. I could not turn her away." The Empress said nothing. She continued to stare at him, as if searching for something hidden beneath his words. Behind her walked forward, holding Vila's hand. The android bowed deeply to the Empress. "Your Majesty, this human did what your own technicians could not. He used methods no has ever tried. His work did not just repair me. It improved me. My systems are stronger now than they were before I was broken." Stepped forward, his face hard. "He used primitive techniques, Earth technology applied to systems. It is an insult to our science." The Empress raised one hand and fell silent immediately. "An insult," she repeated softly. "Our finest scientists studied that crystal core for months. They declared it beyond repair. They gave up. But this human, with his primitive techniques and his dirty shop, succeeded where they failed." She looked at Ho again. "That is not an insult to our science. That is a lesson." Ho did not know what to say. He stood there, trembling slightly, waiting to hear his fate. The Empress smiled. It was a small smile, but it transformed her face completely. The coldness melted away, and for a moment she looked almost warm. "Do not be afraid," she said. "You have done nothing wrong. In fact, you have done something remarkable, and I intend to reward you for it." Ho blinked. "Reward?" "Yes, but first I have questions, and I think we have much to discuss." She looked around the cluttered shop, at the shelves full of parts and the worn tools, and the old toolbox with Korean letters on the handle. Her eyes took in everything, missing nothing. "Tell me about yourself, mechanic," she said. "I want to know who you are and how you learned to do the impossible." Ho stood before the most powerful woman in 1,000 star systems and told her his story. He spoke about his father, the old mechanic who had taught him everything he knew. He spoke about growing up on Earth, learning to fix cars and tractors and anything else that broke. He spoke about coming to space, finding this small station, and opening his shop. He spoke simply, without trying to impress. He was just a mechanic. That was all he had ever been. The Empress listened carefully, her eyes never leaving his face. When he finished, she nodded slowly. Your father sounds like a wise man, she said. He was, Ho replied. He always said that machines are like people. They want to work, they want to be useful. When they break, they are not asking to be thrown away. They are asking for help. And you believe that? I do. Every machine I have ever repaired proved it to me. Even the most damaged ones can come back to life if someone cares enough to try. The Empress turned to look at who stood beside Vila. The android was moving smoothly now, her systems working perfectly. The golden lines in her chest had become part of her, making her unique among all androids. The technique you used, the Empress said. The gold compound in the cracks, where did you learn it? From my ancestors, Ho said. In old Korea there was an art called, when pottery broke, artists filled the cracks with gold. They believed that being broken was not something to hide. It was part of the object's history. The cracks made it more valuable, not less. Interesting. The Empress considered this. Our engineers never thought to embrace the damage. They only tried to erase it. Perhaps there is wisdom in your primitive ways after all. Commander shifted uncomfortably. He clearly did not like hearing human traditions praised by his Empress. Your Majesty, he said carefully, what do you wish to do with this human? The Empress walked slowly around the shop, looking at the shelves and the tools and the half-finished repairs on the workbench. Tell me, mechanic, what do you want? I can give you anything. Wealth beyond imagination, a position in my court, the finest laboratory in the Dominion with every tool and resource you could ever need. Ho felt his heart skip. Such an offer was beyond anything he had ever dreamed. He could leave this small station, this cramped shop, this hard life on the frontier. He could live in luxury, respected and powerful. But even as these thoughts passed through his mind, he knew what his answer would be. Your Majesty, I am honored by your offer, truly I am, but I cannot accept. His eyes went wide, even the guards looked shocked. No one refused the Empress, it simply was not done. But the Empress herself did not seem surprised. She tilted her head slightly, watching Ho with interest. Why not? Because this is where I belong. Ho gestured at his shop, at the cluttered shelves and the worn tools. My father built this place. He taught me everything here. When he died, he asked me to keep helping people, to never turn away someone who needed my help. He looked at Hana, who was watching him with wide eyes. And there are people here who depend on me, miners whose drills break down, traders whose ships need repairs, families who cannot afford the fancy shops in the central systems. If I leave, who will help them? The Empress was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was softer than before. You would give up wealth and power to stay in a place like this, to keep fixing broken machines for people who cannot pay you properly. Yes, Ho said simply, I would. Something changed in the Empress's eyes. The sharp coldness melted away completely, replaced by something warmer. It might have been respect. It might have been admiration. It might have been something deeper. In my life, she said slowly, I have met countless beings who claim to be honorable, politicians who speak of duty while scheming for power, generals who talk of sacrifice while sending others to die, nobles who praise virtue while living in luxury. She stepped closer to Ho. But you are different. You speak of kindness and you mean it. You speak of duty and you live it. You are offered everything and you ask for nothing. She reached into her robe and pulled out a small medallion. It was made of the same glowing crystal as her crown, carved with symbols that seemed to shift and change in the light. I cannot force you to accept my offer, she said, and I will not try, but I can give you this. She pressed the medallion into Ho's hand. It was warm, pulsing gently with energy. This marks you as a friend of the Dominion. It grants you my personal protection and favor. Any citizen of my empire who sees this will treat you with the respect due to a royal guest. You will have access to our trade networks, our medical facilities, our knowledge archives. Ho stared at the medallion in his hand. "Your Majesty, this is too much. I only fixed an android." "You did far more than that." The Empress looked at Vila, who was smiling brightly at Ho. "You gave my daughter hope when everyone else gave her despair. You showed kindness when you had nothing to gain. You reminded me that true nobility is not about blood or power. It is about the choices we make when no one is watching." She stepped back and straightened her robes. "The Dominion has ruled for 10,000 years by being strong, but perhaps we have forgotten how to be kind. Perhaps we need friends who can remind us." Vila broke free from his hand and ran to Ho. She wrapped her arms around him in a tight hug. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for everything." Ho hugged her back gently. "You are welcome, little one. Take care of, and remember, if anything ever breaks again, you know where to find me." Vila laughed. It was a bright, happy sound that filled the cramped shop with warmth. "I will come back, I promise." Approached next, the android bowed deeply in the fashion. "I will never forget what you did for me. In all my years, through all my owners, no one has ever fought so hard to bring me back. You are a remarkable being, Park Ho." "Thank you. Take care of your princess." "Always." The Empress gathered her daughter and began to walk toward the door. The guards fell into formation around them, but at the threshold she paused and looked back. "I will be watching your station, mechanic. If you ever need anything, send word. The Dominion will answer." Then she was gone, her purple robe sweeping through the door like a fatting dream. Ho stood there for a long moment, staring at the medallion in his hand. It glowed softly, a piece of alien royalty in his human palm. Hanna let out a breath she had been holding. What just happened? "I am not sure," Ho admitted, "but I think we made some powerful friends." Hanna laughed a little hysterically. "Friends, the Empress of the Dominion. Do you know what that means? Do you know how many people would kill for what she just gave you?" Ho looked at the medallion one more time. Then he walked to his workbench and placed it carefully beside his father's toolbox. "It means I need to keep being the person who deserves it. Nothing more, nothing less." Hannah shook her head, but she was smiling. "You are impossible, you know that, right?" "That is what everyone keeps telling me." 3 weeks later, a delivery ship arrived at the station. It was not a normal ship. It was a cruiser, gleaming and elegant and completely out of place on the frontier. The captain carried a massive crate to Ho's shop. Inside were tools and parts and materials that Ho had only ever dreamed about. Components perfectly made, human tools of the highest quality, and a small note written in elegant script. "For the mechanic who listens to what machines need, may you never stop helping those who cannot help themselves. V." Hannah stared at the crate with her mouth open. Are those?" "Yes," Ho said quietly. He lifted a delicate scanner from the crate. It was worth more than everything else in his shop combined. "What are we going to do with all this?" Ho smiled and set the scanner on his workbench. "The same thing we have always done. Help people, fix things, keep our promises." He looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, a little alien girl was traveling with her mother, holding her android friend close. And somewhere in her heart, she remembered a human mechanic who had taught her that kindness was more valuable than any treasure. News of what happened spread across the frontier and beyond. Traders carried the story to other stations. Diplomats whispered about it in their councils. The Empress had personally honored a human, not a general or a president, but a simple mechanic. Other species began to pay more attention to humans. They had always seen them as primitive, short-lived, stubborn. But now they wondered if they had missed something important. They wondered what else humans could do if given the chance. And in his small shop on Frontier Station Orion 7, Park Ho went back to work. There were always machines to fix, always people to help, always problems to solve. He was just a mechanic, but sometimes that was exactly what the galaxy needed.